Hello, my name is Carolyn Norton. I'm the practice director of cloud services here at Velosio, and today we're going to talk about improving IT management with Microsoft. In today's rapidly evolving IT landscape, organizations face numerous challenges in effectively managing their IT infrastructure and operations. You have legacy systems, disparate tools, and manual processes that often result in inefficiencies, increased costs, and security vulnerabilities. To overcome these hurdles and drive better IT management practices, businesses need to have a comprehensive solution that integrates and seamlessly works with their existing environment. And so today we have our guest, Eric Robertson, who's going to be here to share some insights on IT challenges that IT leaders face and provide some personal experience in navigating these challenges. So, with that being said, thank you, Eric, for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Carolyn. Eric Robertson, Director of IT at Velosio. I've been having the fun challenge of, herding the cattle, making sure everybody has the tools and the resources they need to get the job done while making sure we're secure, keeping our customers secure, keeping our partners secure. Security is a big part of all of our jobs today, and making sure people have those tools and resources they need to get the job done effective and efficient.
100%. And with that being said, is security one of the most important things IT leaders have to face today? What are those common challenges and those top challenges that you're facing as an IT leader?
Yeah, so I would say there's three big ones going on right now. It's that balance of cost cutting and innovation. So what we're hearing, the how to do more with less. So how do we continue to stay on the edge while not increasing our spend, and sometimes even being asked to decrease our spend? So how do we do that? That's a big one. A lot of questions come on how do you continue to innovate, give us those tools while not increasing the cost that is usually associated with more tools. Of course, there's security. We're in that ever evolving world where people want that data that we have, that gold that we're protecting. And how do we keep all that safe? And as new technology comes out, of course, there's more ways of getting at it. So how do we stay ahead of the curve and make sure that we're keeping all that stuff safe? And then the last one, I would say, it kind of goes with the others, is just kind of how do we adapt with change? So, we're in this generative AI world right now, and new tools are coming out. So how do we stay on that bleeding edge and make sure that our team has what they need to do? But again, we're protecting all that data, that gold that we've been creating for all these years. And how do we make sure that they can get to it while also keeping it secure at the same time?
So all these challenges, and a lot of these challenges have been around with IT for a while, right? They tend to live in that same space. How do we protect the data? How do we stay cutting edge, not bleeding edge, cutting edge, being in that same realm? And then, of course, let's not go crazy with the cost. So it sounds like a tale that's old as time. Yeah. What have you done, and what have you seen other IT leaders do to tackle these challenges, both in their current state, but also set you up for the future?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. I think the big thing is finding a vendor like Microsoft where they have tools that cover almost every scenario. And then with that, because the tools are together in what they call the Microsoft stack, they already have that integration, and having all these disparate systems causes all this extra complexity. And if you have that complexity and you have to figure out how do I keep this piece secure, and how do I pass the data from this system to that system, and I'm getting these signals on this screen, and how do I correlate that data together? I think it's one of those big hurdles of what we have to overcome, is just being able to get all that stuff into a concise way so that we can work with one set of tools that are able to communicate easily and effectively and cross the data between the different systems, which is what everybody wants. No matter where they're working, they want to be able to get to the stuff. And from the back end, when we get all these either security alerts or activities that are going on, how do we see from a single pane of glass so that we can make informed decisions on what we need to take action on and not be burdened by too many signals? How do we kind of see which ones are those important ones?
Wade through the noise.
Wade through the noise. A lot of noise coming at us. We want to cut it down and take the action on what needs to take. We don't want to be burdened. Alert fatigue is real. IT is
So
burdened by alerts.
Microsoft has been around for a long time, though. So what specific Microsoft technologies? Because again, Microsoft has been with us for a long time. One would say that our data already, most of the population, I don't want to speak for everyone, but most of the
We're in a
population
Microsoft
today
world.
is Microsoft centric. So what particular tool sets inside of Microsoft are you leveraging? Are you seeing leaders leverage that is not in place today that is helping with these current issues?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite things, and a lot of people overlook it, is when you move into like that cloud world. So let's take Azure for example. When you start to go there, you're like, oh my goodness, this is great, but there's so much stuff, and what do I do? And hey, I can spin up this VM, but did I do it right? And is this set up correctly? So one of my favorite tools is the Azure Advisor. And I think being able to have something that kind of tells us and guides those that might not know, or kind of provides those best practices, we're able to have those actions right away. No longer are you like, did I miss something? Did I make a mistake? Like now I have my security recommendation, my optimization, my reliability. Like you're not relying just on people's knowledge. You're kind of filling in those gaps, and you're able to see where you can improve.
Do you
From
feel
a
like it
dashboard.
fills in that skill gap for an organization that maybe isn't in the cloud today? It's a lot to try to ramp up for a team.
I think the skill gap is a big issue, and I think having tools that are able to help fill in and guide you. So if we look at Azure Advisor from like an infrastructure and SaaS and IaaS and PaaS solution, like they're telling us like, how do we make improvements to get better? How do we keep this secure? So it's giving people kind of like a roadmap. Another reason why I'm going to jump to SecureScore, another one of my favorite tools. We're now able to kind of have like, hey, here's where our security posture is, and now here are the actions that we can take to improve it. So people are like, let's move to the zero trust, framework. Well, how do I get on that journey? Is a common question I get asked by a lot. Like, I want to start this. I hear it's where I need to be. It's going to make me more secure, but I don't know where to start. And by having something like SecureScore, where, hey, the higher the score is going to give you a bigger impact. It's going to be more meaningful, making sure MFA is on, making sure you're using the right type of MFA, because not all MFA is treated the same. It's not all the same security. It's continuing to evolve. And by Microsoft giving us those recommendations, it's giving your teams the ability to see that. And from a leader's perspective, you can see and say, hey, why aren't we doing this yet? Like, here's the stuff that I see you did. Awesome job. Really happy. But now we have all these other actions to take. So let's start, identifying when we can start tackling these and making us even more secure. Which
And
I
the
think is
wonderful part here is these recommendations don't really stop, right? The telemetry that Microsoft gets from all the organizations that are leveraging their tool set helps you as a leader get new recommendations. How are other people doing it? Should I be doing this? How do I incorporate that intel into my IT team?
exactly. And I think we're going to even see it more with Copilot. I don't want to turn this into the Copilot show, but I know everybody's talking about it. But I think having that generative AI, where Microsoft's using all this data that they're capturing from everybody and able to then say, hey, for example, let's look at Security's Copilot. Oh my, this alert just came in. Well, another company who has, is getting something similar. Is this an attack that's going on across different things? And now this other signal is lit up. So now they can start to make these correlations, and they can start giving you like remediation playbooks of like, hey, how do you tackle it? This is great. Now I have all my stuff tied into the Microsoft ecosystem, and I have my devices being managed. I'm getting my security alerts going there. So I'm getting all these signals, and Microsoft's able to say, hey, the account's compromised, the device is compromised. We need to start severing these off and limiting their exposure so that we stop it before it gets out of control, and we start to see those lateral movements to those higher privileged accounts. So really powerful stuff. I get really excited. Sorry.
That's not a bad thing. I mean, again, this is why we're talking about what IT leaders tend to face. I mean, there's a lot that an IT team and an IT leader and an organization has to take into consideration in order to make sure that their business is running effectively and protecting both the business's reputation and the business's data. So it just continues to become this daunting task. And how does How do these tool sets help both educate, provide insights, allow an organization to take a step back? Whereas in before, it took, it took probably months of planning, and I think this is what's going to happen. Here's what I'm hearing. Oh, but now things have changed because technology, nowadays you have all this information at your fingertips. Plus, to your point, you have some opportunities to automate some of these responses. If there's a remediation that's being flagged, here's how I want you to address it. If there is a gap here, or if there's an opportunity to optimize there, I know I want to just go ahead and do these things. I don't have to sit here and have this large committee call and decide every single, bell and whistle that we want to enable. And it sounds like that's what you're leveraging when you're talking about the Microsoft tool stack.
Exactly. And I think, now we'll bring in another tool. Let's talk about Power Automate, one of my favorite tools.
Automate?
So all that automation that you just referenced, we need that. And, when you want to do more with less, how is that possible? You got to automate, because otherwise you're going to have physical bodies that need to do these tasks. So again, how do we automate those simple remediations or those simple tasks that we're responsible for doing day in and day out? So account creations, account deactivations, enabling people to reset their own passwords or set up different MFA authentication methods. Like all those types of tasks, like we need to figure out how do you automate it so that you don't need a person that's being like, okay, submit your ticket so now I can reset your password to get you back into your account. Like that's wasted manpower when they could be doing something that's more beneficial, innovating, making additional automation so that we continue to innovate and go through this digital transformation that all the companies are now going through, and staying again ahead of that curve. So that automation is that key piece, and tools like Power Automate that starts to bridge all these systems together is super powerful and gives smaller teams that flexibility to start really tackling the constant flow of I need to do this, I need to do that. Like
I'm going to touch on the smaller teams part. I don't hear this as much, but I know in the past, as we start to talk to clients about these tool sets and what's possible with them, periodically in the old days, I don't know that I hear it so much these days, but I know it's a concern, and I'm sure with AI, it's a concern that's coming back up. As you start to leverage these tool sets, it's supposed to make your job easier. There's always this concern about, well, does that mean that I don't have something to do now because the technology is doing it for us? I know my opinion on it. What's your take on it?
I think technology only makes us better. So it's not necessarily getting rid of these technical jobs. They're still going to be needed, but it's taking those users and giving them different responsibilities. We still need these bodies in order to do more automation, there's constantly new tools, and in order to stay ahead of that curve, you're constantly, like, from a security perspective, if you're not constantly changing, you're just lagging behind, and you're going to get hit by that. So there's still things that we still have to do on a day-to-day basis. We haven't even talked about backups and Azure backup and how awesome that is, and how one incident with having a bad backup strategy could be a company's destruction. So there's still tasks that need to happen. There's still bodies that need to be responsible for those things, and how do you recover once they happen? But it's now giving your users the tools to let them do more. So again, it's that do more with less. So we're still staying maybe the same number of people, but now we're able to do different tasks, and people aren't just pigeonholed into like small little subsets, but they might have more responsibilities. And that's where we really start to see these superstars on your team start to come out and be like, hey, I want to learn this. I want to do this new cool technology. And that's how you kind of stay ahead of that curve, by giving them more freedom to innovate.
It also gives them the opportunity to get exposed to, okay, the day-to-day stuff is being handled now, and we're checking, and we have checks and balances in place to make sure that those, like you mentioned with the backup, that they're actually happening, and that they're being tested and validated, which we still have to do to some degree. But I also feel like it also exposes the team to see what other challenges are out there, or if there's other efficiencies. You mentioned, optimizations and efficiencies within the org. Beyond what they're seeing, there might be other things inside of the organization that might benefit from what you just did for this item, can be transposed, or maybe some different version of that for this other item. As an IT leader, How does that work in terms of kind of venturing beyond the technical space, so to speak?
Yeah, I think, IT is pivotal in all organizations. And I think we play a big part in, again, letting people do what they need to do and giving them those tools. So by partnering with those other departments, practices, we're able to bring some of these tools that either we're using in-house or things that we're starting to explore and saying, hey, your data, you want to be able to do this reporting, and you're using this old school, bring your own database, and you want to move to more of a data lake model where we're able to get more insights and be prepared for the co-pilot revolution that's coming down the pipe. Like, there's things that IT needs to be involved in, so part of those discussions, but also be able to have the freedom by not having to do all that manual stuff with some of that automation, so that we can be a part of those conversations and truly bring the skill set that other teams may not have.
100%. It's not just IT anymore. It's really, business processes and how can things be improved. You talked about a couple of Microsoft products. Are there any other products? You touched on Azure Backup. Do you want to jump in on that one? The safety net of an organization.
I know you love Azure Backup, and I love Azure Backup. And I think, people don't talk about site recovery as much, but it's another feature that kind of coincides with it. So I would say site recovery, having that ability that if your data center, like let's say you have an on-premise data center still, or you're in a hybrid work model, or even on another cloud environment, having that ability to restore somewhere else almost instantly is, again, how much downtime can your company handle before it's going to go out of business? So having that ability to kind of shift the workloads easily and fast is crucial. So again, the cloud technology is really cool. Having hybrid environments where you have some of your workloads still on-prem is kind of being the norm now, but even having a large footprint in the cloud and leveraging some of those cloud tools. So I'm going to bring up another one of my favorites, Azure Arc. Love it.
Yeah.
Love Azure Arc. So as someone who deals in a hybrid cloud environment, and being able to manage the on-prem stuff and doing Azure Arc to highlight some of the on-prem legacies, let's say deficiencies, and have them connected into a cloud single pane of glass where I can see all of my cloud resources, on-prem resources, see all the compliance around them, all the alerting in one kind of single pane is super powerful. And for someone that's working across all these multi-clouds, bringing those in as well, you're able to just kind of like no longer bounce between, I got to go to this portal for this, and where's that server? Is that server up? I got to go to this portal. Like, you're able to kind of have that one single place, and then the automation that's unlocked once you're there. Now we're talking about being able to spin up, spin down, all the remediation. Hey, something got triggered. We need to, isolate this VM from the mix. Like, we don't know what's going on. We could start doing all this automation around alerting, which is, again,
it gives you 100% insight to your digital real estate, whether it's wherever it is, it's your organization's digital real estate that you want to be able to control, manage, and effectively take care of.
Yes.
In one spot.
That single pane of glass is super valuable. I think from any leader's perspective, not having to go to all these different areas is super powerful. And then from getting those alerts, like doing a SIEM, like Azure Sentinel, again, we're now taking all those signals, all those alerts, putting them into one place so that we're getting that full picture. Without that full picture, hey, my device set off an alert, but now I have to go to another system to go see, did the account actually have something that went on with it? Did my email, did they click on an email? Microsoft's ecosystem, if you're invested into the whole thing, you're getting all those signals. They're all coming together. You're like, oh, this person clicked on a bad link. And luckily, with Microsoft's AI, it happened to zap it from the 30 other mailboxes that hit that and you're like, wow, they just stopped it from me having to go in the back end and do a purge on all these mailboxes. I just zapped it out instantly without me doing anything. So again, it's that real time. How do we keep the user safe and still let them do what they need to do, which I think is super powerful.
So in that vein, let's talk security, right? Security, everyone knows they need it. I haven't met anyone, I'm sure you haven't either, that says, no, I don't care about security. It's not important to us.
Crazy.
So how beyond what we just talked about, what are the common security challenges that these tool sets have already alleviated for the organization and for IT leaders today, right? There were obviously challenges in the past. Now they're kind of settled down. And then what are the new challenges that organizations have to keep in mind as they try to strengthen their security posture?
Yeah, I think we touched on it already with we got to stay ahead of the curve. If you're not innovating, especially in like the security space, and you're just like, oh, I set up this thing 3 years ago and I expect it to keep me safe moving forward. Like, everyone said, let's go to MFA. Well, we've started to learn not all MFA is treated equal. So again, we're being guided, which is a big piece. It's like, how do you know where you're supposed to head next? Microsoft is guiding us so that we know not to go down the path, and we're able to go and do what we need to focus on the things that are going to improve our security posture. So we have a tool that's telling us, hey, this is going to impact a lot of people, so we're going to roll it out a little bit slower, but it's also going to make our security posture way more positive. So we still want to do it, but we now know we kind of got to give it a little lead time and let our users know, like, hey, we're going to be forcing you to do number matching on your authenticator, because we don't want you to approve an MFA request that isn't valid. So
is that something you have to juggle? You're as an IT leader,
yes,
you're responsible for protecting the organization. But conversely, you also need to have these tool sets enable the end user to do their job. So how does that play a factor? You mentioned slowly rolling it out as a way to help the adoption rate towards something that you're trying to accomplish, but also give the users the ability to do their jobs. How does that factor in?
So you have to tiptoe. So again, we got to keep everything secure. We got to keep our accounts secure. We got to keep our data secure. We got to keep our devices secure. But we need to let them all work, and we can't hinder them to say, hey, I need you to give me admin rights for a second so I can do this. So how do I get around that? So is it by creating a trusted app catalog so our users are able to get to the applications they need when they need to, so that they're not being hindered by saying, hey, I need to install another piece of software. It wasn't part of my thing. By having something like a app catalog with trusted downloads, again, you're getting away from a big security threat by now saying, don't go to the internet and just grab anything. We got you. These are our trusted applications. You have free reign to install them. They've been validated. We'll keep them up to date, and you'll always have the latest version. So again, it's one of those, I kind of took your question and moved it around a little bit, but we're making the users able to continue to operate with at least as little friction as possible. There's going to be some friction because not everything is going to be frictionless, but we're trying to minimize that friction. That's like a big part of IT's job, is we have to be annoying, but we can't be too annoying because we want to make sure they can work.
Well, you're trying to serve at least two different masters, right? You have leadership that you're trying to work with and making sure that the organization's protected, but then you have your user base who you're effectively trying to support them. You're trying to make sure that they're able to do their jobs, they're efficient, they're doing what they need to do. And how do you juggle those two worlds and make sure that you're, as the IT leader who ultimately has these two feedbacks that you have to keep in constant contact with, do what you need to do all the protection, all the innovating, all of the efficiencies that we talked about earlier. So, I mean, it makes sense. This is something that, we have to keep in mind when we're talking about the tool sets. It's not just how do we get our jobs done, but how do we take in the human factor and factor that in as well. Factor. So we talked about security. We talked about Power Automate as a way to add efficiencies. So a lot of these are cloud native tools, and you kind of touched on it already. You have the challenge of taking care of your digital real estate that's in the cloud and on premise. What are the benefits of having these solutions that are in the cloud help you with your on-premise scenario, not just from your server perspective, but I'm sure there's other digital real estate that doesn't reside in the cloud that you need to take care of?
Yeah, so I think it's by having tools that support both. And again, it's that single pane of glass. So how do I make sure my SQL server that's on-prem is getting the latest updates, is making sure that it's security, like the certain ports are blocked, and that I have, it's optimized and the reliability is there. Those recommendations are being bubbled up by all that awesome AI and machine learning that's inside of Azure. So that Azure advisor who's going to be like, hey, here's what we could do to make this better. If this one server goes down, that's going to affect this entire cluster of applications. Do we need to have a secondary SQL backup just to make sure that if we're not relying on one server to be our fail point? So it's helping. Again, we're getting rid of the guessing game and we're getting more to what do we need to do, and Microsoft's recommendations through Secure Score, through Azure Advisor, through all these different avenues are helping us kind of weed through, like, there's so much stuff going on, but what should I be focused on? And that's a big part of IT's responsibility is identifying what you need to be responsible for and how do you make things better. And they're giving us those recommendations, which I know we've said multiple times now, but I can't stress enough of the importance of that, because you're either, like we said earlier, missing some skills, there's skill gaps, there's less people doing more tasks, so you're all over the place. So how do you remember which areas need to be touched? Using structured deployment, so all things are set up the same, and maybe something got changed. Okay, well, how do we know something got changed? There's only one of us that is monitoring this one thing. Oh, it got flagged in this, so I now see somebody made a change that flagged a security vulnerability. I now know I need to go back and address this and figure out how was this change made, and being able to see that from, again, that single pane of glass gives us the insight from the users doing it and the people who are making sure it's actually being done.
So how do you think AI is going to play a role here? We don't have to, we know all the cool stuff that's happening around AI and what it can do and what possibilities are getting unlocked with this new venture that we're walking into. How do you foresee AI and machine learning help IT leaders with exactly what you're talking about? Better insights, prioritization, optimization, security, vulnerability, all of the stack of responsibilities that IT leaders have to have. How does AI possibly help in this well?
So before we go into that, I'm gonna just answer one other question that you didn't answer, but I want to answer. So ChatGPT, which is the big player in the space, we all hear about it. It's great, but then we see all these articles coming out about, like, oh my goodness, Samsung just released their like IP secrets into the wild and stuff. I think being able to support these cutting edge technologies like generative AI, giving our users, hey, we don't want to handicap them, but we want to make sure you can do what you need to do. There's policies that, IT has to be responsible for, so that it's telling the users what they couldn't do. And the good thing about where Copilot's coming in, so Microsoft's solution where it's going to be integrated directly to your tenant, that is now your large learning model is now focused specifically on your tenant, so that where people are scared with ChatGPT and your secrets escaping, you're now keeping it within your control and your purview, so that, again, it's alleviating one of those big fears that's coming with generative AI, is that, hey, I asked a question, I want to know the answer, and I want it to write me something, but now I don't want other people to know that I asked this question and what my answer was and what data I got into it. So I think that's where Microsoft's Copilot is really going to capture a lot of, especially the IT security minded folks, and say, hey, I want to give my users these tools to make their jobs easier, but I also have to keep my stuff safe. And so by getting it tied into the tenant level, and what Microsoft is proposing is where we're in control of this data and it's not leaving our control. That's what we're all we need from a business perspective.
So it's a fencing where we can use these innovative tools, but they stay within the organization. So they get the exposure, but the data, again, that gold that you're talking about, that you talked about earlier, still remains within the organization with whatever new innovation and technology that gets introduced, like generative AI.
Correct. Yep.
Valid point, and it is a big concern these days.
And it's going to help with the skill gap again. It's one of those areas. So an area that I'm excited, the security co-pilot is going to be able to make. So once a security event happens, you then have to figure out, how did it happen? Why did it happen? What's going on with this? And one of the things that you spend a lot of time is kind of doing that research of what went on and how do you then prevent it from the future. And Security Copilot is going to have a nice little feature that says, hey, generate me a report of what endpoints were affected, how did it traverse, where did it go? And it's going to do a lot of that legwork that people spend a lot of time on, and make it clear and understandable depending on what your audience is, because you also have to sometimes scope it for the audience. Is it the technical audience, or is it the senior leadership team who just wants to kind of have a broader picture and understanding of how it happened and how are we going to stop it in the future? So I think that's a big piece. We're going to kind of take some of these kind of mundane tasks and alleviate it even from a security perspective, so that we kind of have those tasks done for us, which is one of the things I'm most excited about generative AI. Writing those emails, writing those reports.
One of the things I always talk about when it relates to cloud is just being in the right spot for these cool tools that come out. Right now it's AI, right? Last year we really weren't talking about AI, and now all of a sudden that's the big thing. And my interpretation of all this is, you have taken steps, you've taken those recommendations, you've looked at what the industry is dealing with, you've looked at Microsoft recommendations, and you've kind of positioned things. You don't boil the ocean in one shot, right? You take things little by little. And I think now that we're entering this generative AI world, it sounds like you're positioned as an IT leader to benefit from what's coming in regards to Copilot, because again, you have made all these investments in tools. You've been leveraging these tools and it's been helping your day to day. But now there's even more of a possibility to continue to expand that with what's forthcoming within Copilot. Am I wrong?
No, I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly it. I think it's about setting up, we have this data, that valuable data is within the tenant, and now how do we expose it in a safe way to the people who need those for the right responses? I think a lot of the time it's hard for people to even find what they need to find because we have so much data. Yep. That this is going to help alleviate that, and it's going to help bubble it up. Now, of course, that comes with the converse, and it's going to be like, well, now I hope our controls were in place, because if somebody has access to that data, they might not know how to get to it, but they still have access to it. Right. Is that going to expose something? So you still need to make sure that you're in a security-minded.
But that's mindset. Where those recommendations come into play, right? Because you're still essentially you're still following these key IT principles of data protection, data management, efficiencies, name it. We've talked about it in this video, but as long as you're doing these items to continue to modernize and innovate and set the organization up in the best possible position, when these new tool sets come out, it sounds like you're in the best possible position to integrate these new cool features, these new opportunities, because you've already laid the foundation within your organization. Even if you're not there yet, you can get there, so that by the time whatever the next thing is, you're in a good spot.
Correct. You're already down the road. And I think that's a big piece. Is if you're already on the road, that's great. You're there. And for people, the movement to this, let's say Microsoft stack road, it's low to get into, and they made it very simple to jump onto it. And now, as long as you're there, being on it, you're ready for that next change. You're ready for that next challenge. You're ready for that next bump, because a lot of it is also bumps. And I think that's where the cloud really is good, because, again, we're going to that more flexible, scalable environment, whereas on-prem, which still has benefits, you weren't as flexible. You kind of were like, how much am I going to spend? So we're going from that CapEx to that OpEx. And so that's going to be the big thing is it gives you that flexibility to shift with what are the new priorities, because companies' priorities are constantly changing, and it gives you that flexibility to kind of roll with the punches, as I like to call them.
It allows you to be agile.
Correct.
Absolutely. So I don't know that I would have predicted AI, although some would say it was
Skynet.
forthcoming. Yes. We know where we are today. We know the cool new thing out there. Beyond AI, what do you foresee in the future for IT leaders, organizations as a whole? Like what's in the future that maybe an organization needs to be thinking about in terms of running their business? I mean, this is the technology and the people and various other things run the business, and this aspect is such a key critical component. What does the future lie? How does it look like in terms of technology?
I think we're going to continue to, there's going to always be new innovations. And I think it's about staying cutting edge as possible and being like having that agility to adapt. Things are going to change. You know, like you said, generative AI wasn't really talked about as much. And then all of a sudden it blew up out of nowhere and was just like, here it is. The pandemic, I know we don't talk about it as much, but that was another big one. How are you going to support your workforce that used to all be in offices now be remote?
These are the bumps, right?
Those are the bumps. You just got hit by a cyber incident. What are you going to do? What's your strategy to get back online? How are you going to stop this from happening in the future? Were you prepared with good backups? Did you have a mutable backup so that in case your backups got compromised, they couldn't be compromised? Like, there's so many different things that you're constantly trying to tiptoe around and make sure, you got to make sure your users are happy. You got to make sure everything's secure, and you also have to be cost conscious. So having the tools that kind of scale and are flexible to shift with you is where I would say you just need to be on a platform that is showing that they're innovating with the times and staying ahead of the curve. And I think Microsoft and this Copilot is they're really proving to us that they're ready to take us to that next.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, and that's essentially what we're saying to organizations: innovate, transform, be ready for your next, whatever that future is, because we don't know what's possible, we don't know what's forthcoming. But again, if you set yourself up just right, you're going to be in that best possible position to take advantage of whatever someone innovates and creates going forward. And IT is one of those things that you have to make sure you're on the know, and you have the recommendations, and you know where the wind is blowing, so that you can help the organization make those decisions, gain those insights, and leverage these tool sets. Thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your insights as an IT leader, and sharing what you've done and what you've leveraged from your experience to help organizations, unpack the power of technology. There's so much out there, to your point. How do you really know what to do, and
how do you harness it?
Yes, exactly. How do you get the best out of what's out there? So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, Eric, again for joining us. If you want to continue having this conversation and explore how Velosio can help IT leaders enhance the processes that work the organization through the Microsoft stack, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to continue having this conversation, and we're so happy that you took the time to attend this, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you.